And we are back. Here we are again with another episode of Carolina Film Network podcast. Last time we were here, we were talking about project development, and I'm just going to go over the bullet points of what we talked about before, because we're going to dive right into pre-production today. Today's episode is on pre-production. And understand that what we were talking about with project development is not the same thing as pre-production.
No, definitely not.
The pre-production stage is a very large stage of production, okay? And the project development part of that is a business aspect of it before that, all right? So just going through those bullet points, just to remind everybody, you have conceptualizing the idea / topic, the genre, hyper-targeting the audience, story development, elements of effective storytelling, research for authenticity and legitimacy, writing a treatment, setting a target date for principal photography, development of a business plan, marketing strategy and plan, and budget, developing contracts and NDAs for crew and cast, hiring the crew call, etc., sending NDAs and contracts to crew, evaluating the treatment for marketing, merchandising, and product placement opportunities, writing the script and adapting it to screenplay, and then you can begin your pre-production process. Now, keep in mind, all of these things that you're doing, and if you want to reference any of the stuff that we talked about off of the last episode, make sure you check out the last episode to hear about these bullet points broken down into more details. All right, but we are going to keep pushing along and getting into pre-production. All right.
Yes.
So now that you have all of that stuff set up, you have your crew, you have your script. Now you're adapting it to screenplay, and you can actually do more with it moving forward. You have the business side of it already set up. You know how you're going to monetize your film so that you set it up for post-production and beyond post-production, where you can actually make money off of your film and stuff like that.
Budget is set.
Everything is set. So now you got to go through the process of pre-production. All right. So, and this is again somewhat in a decent order. So if you want to put this in bullet points, you can do that as well. All right. First thing is storyboarding your screenplay. All right. What you want to do is you want to get, and now there's storyboard artists that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that, they don't want to spend the money to get a storyboard artist. Listen, you can storyboard your screenplay if you want to yourself, but make sure that you go through your screenplay section by section. You want to do a scene by scene. People do stick figures.
Yeah.
Some people that may not be as artistic. If you want to do a description to block it out and to storyboard the entire thing that way, you can do it that way. A lot of people do it different ways, but you need to storyboard your screenplay. Location scouting,
Dun, dun, dun.
which is one of the funnest things to do, right?
I love it.
So you got your whole script. You got your whole screenplay or whatever. You got the treatment already. You can take your treatment, or you can take your script, and you can go out there and location scout.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind, one of the things that we talked about before, as far as if you're the one that wrote it, that wrote the screenplay or the script, then you can incorporate some of these things into your story.
If you have any locations that you kind of already want to use,
Yeah.
you can always write them in.
But if you're like going off of somebody else's script or this, that, and the third, then you got to keep in mind what locations you can cheat angles at. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
there's been plenty of times that we've used one house for like
3
four or
houses.
five different scenes, like
Mm-hmm.
or 4 or 5 different locations, whether it's rooms, the establishing shots of the house, an establishing shot of an exterior door
Yeah,
or
I
a
was gonna say
backyard.
doorways and
Yeah, all that stuff. You can double all that stuff down. Um, Making sides for casting.
and I will add with locations too. The South Carolina Film Commission has an amazing catalog of locations. You can put down what style house you're looking for or what era you want it to be in, and it pops up a whole list. So definitely check them out for locations.
I'd say wherever you are to contact your film commission and see
Yeah.
what they should have a resource for locations, and if nothing else, at least the people that are registered with the film commission, uh, they should have location managers and stuff registered on there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's see.
Sides for casting.
Sides for casting, which is her forte. So
Yeah.
I'll let you I'll let you get into that.
So when you're doing sides for casting, um, definitely make sure that it is something that brings out that character that you want to be able to see in that person before you cast them, because you want to make sure that they can actually do that role. What are you doing?
Product placement.
Yeah, product placement. So you want to make sure that you hire the right person for that part. So I would say definitely, um, make sure that those sides work for that character.
Yes, yes. Um,
And don't do, well, I'm not going to say don't do, but realize that there are several different stages for casting too. With like,
yeah.
some people do cold reads or
We'll
monologues
do a
and stuff.
whole episode on casting.
We will.
A whole episode on casting. Now remember in the project development stage, we already developed the contracts for cast and crew. So this is where you actually negotiate your contracts with your cast. Um, you have there's a thing that I like to tell people to do if they don't know the best way to do contracts or the best standardized contracts to do. The first thing that I tell people to do is go by SAG-AFTRA standards. I mean, that's a great guide. That is industry professional union standards. If you can honor and respect the your cast, professionally, then why not give them a professional grade contract? I mean, it's
And that's
self-explanatory.
really to be expected when you're working with professional actors, and especially if you're casting from out of state, and casting professionally, you need your contracts to be professional as well.
If as an actor, Christian, I'd say as an actor, have you like what kind of different things have you come across? Because I know you've had to sign plenty of contracts. Like, have you seen some that were just like horribly done?
Absolutely. Once upon a time, I was about to sign a contract with a model and talent agency, and I guess they didn't expect me to read it. I don't know, uh, but I read it, And one thing you got to also, take into consideration if they're rushing you to sign something, and they say, "Hey, we need you to," that's a red flag right there. Anyway,
Hmm.
going back to that story, so I read it. I'm like, this basically says that anything that I do, including stuff that has nothing to do with you, you own. We're gonna need to change that. And they got all pissy with me and angry, and they told me I was a loser and all this kind of stuff. So the fact that they told me that is also another red flag. Anytime an agency tells you you're a loser because you're not going to sign a predatory contract, let that be a red flag for you. Key thing to remember is always read what you're looking at, and if you don't understand it, try to consult with someone that does understand some of the legalese or some of the terms in the contract. In addition to that, be very wary of contracts that tie you down for a number of years, that just want to take ownership of your work in a way that seems to be that looks like indentured servitude for use of lesser words. But I've come across those, and I've just totally said no. And when you say no and they cuss you out, then that means you were right.
Yeah,
Man,
definitely.
at the end of the day, when you're when it's your production and you're trying to cast people and contract people, especially as a producer, you have to understand you got to put yourself in their shoes. Like that person's going to want to know, like, if this project is not completed, am I still getting paid? Well, because that happens a lot. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised how many people start a project and don't finish it, or it takes forever for them to finish it, and they're like, "Am I getting paid?" They need to know when they're getting paid. They need to know that when they're on set, they can feel safe, that they can that their liability falls on somebody who it's supposed to fall on, so that in case of arbitration or anything like that, they know how that's supposed to work. They need to understand. What am I getting out of this? What role am I playing? What time am I supposed to show up? What are the parameters of me showing up? Like, do I need to show up by a certain time? Or if I don't show up by a certain time, how am I getting docked by that? Or, what are the do's and don'ts that I can and cannot do? Like, they need to know all of these things in these contracts. And just like Christian said, if you don't know how to write a contract, I mean, you need to find some resources that do, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you'd be surprised how many lawyers will gladly review a contract for you.
Mhm.
They'll look it over and be like, hey man, this is not covered, but all you got to do is add this addendum or add whatever you need to add or change it up however you want to change it up. But that's all the negotiation process is, making sure that that cast member is taken care of, because ultimately you want them to give you their all, just like they want you to give them what you promised to give to them, and don't go by promissory notes. I mean, don't go by people just saying, I'm going to do this for you, and this is how much I'm going to give you, and da 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 da, and they don't have it in black and white. If they don't have it in black and white, then it doesn't exist. And then same thing as a person who's hiring people, you need to have it in black and white if you expect them to give you their all. Because if you don't have a contract for those cast members, don't expect them to show up on time. Don't expect them.
Yeah,
Don't
there's nothing
expect.
you can hold them to.
Yeah, you can't hold them to anything. I mean, like I've mentioned before, like there's been, I want to say it was only one time, and it didn't even go further than that, because all I did was reference the contract, and I told him, I was like, you're on a contract, so you do have to do this,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. It was easy discussion, fix it like that, no problem, no, no tension, no nothing like that. It's just sometimes it's a very good reference to go back to where it's just at bottom line. You just got that
And it
bottom
can go
line.
down as simple as, cell phones on set. Like it needs to be
Oh yeah,
very descriptive.
alcohol. People get excited about filming and they think, "Oh, I'm in a movie, or I'm this, or I'm that," or they'll bring alcohol or something like that. Or you got children on set,
And we've
or
had
whatever.
both of
Yeah,
those
we've had
happen.
both of those. Like
No.
people bringing children on set that, if it's in their contract because of the stuff that we have going on that day, they need to understand that this is a professional set. If you're not working, you don't need to be on the set.
Mhm.
Also, oh,
Go ahead, go ahead.
well, also another thing,
Talk a little more in
oftentimes,
your mic.
huh?
No, I was gonna say talk a little more in your mic.
You want me talking to Mike like that?
Yeah.
This is not that kind of show. I also wanted to say also that if you have an actor on your set that might have a little more experience than the other ones, and they're acting like prima donnas and stuff like that, that's not at all unusual. Oftentimes, people with small minds think, too largely about themselves. So with that said, always have a backup in mind, especially when you're casting. You can cast that lead, but always have in mind someone to replace that lead. Make sure that everybody, and I mean everybody, is replaceable, because you're gonna, come into contact with people that think their poop don't stink, and their poop smells the worst. So, when they start smelling, then, you can go ahead and replace them, or let them know, listen, you need to, straighten up, or you can't be replaced. And make sure that you put that as a clause in the contract that, basically says, listen, if you do X amount of things, or your behavior is, disruptive on set and is causing our schedule to be thrown back and is costing us money, we do reserve the right to replace you at any time. And that puts them on notice ahead of time. Hey, you know what? Leave that prima donna stuff, at home. You know, you can practice it in the mirror, do whatever you want, but not here. That
Mhm.
doesn't flow. You know, doesn't fly over here.
Word. So moving along, that's part of the negotiation of the contracts. So with the contracts, once these people are contracted, understand that you've taken them onto your project with their flaws as well, or with their, I say flaws, but with their demands as well,
Yeah.
because people, again, respecting them as people, as actors, as professionals, they also have certain things that need to be taken into consideration for them. So two major things that you need to understand are food.
Yes.
Your craft services, you need to go through that cast and say,
What are your
what are your
allergies? What
allergies?
do you not eat? Are you
Yeah,
vegan,
yeah. So
gluten free?
oh yeah. So we again with food, you also have makeup. So food and makeup, you need to know if people have skin allergies, sensitivities, and stuff like that. Food sensitivities,
And
allergies.
it's always good to hire a makeup artist that knows what they're doing, because they
Absolutely.
will do skin allergy tests. But if
Mhm.
you do, cast outside of your state, it's not all, you can't have someone fly from Texas to South Carolina for a skin test. So
Yeah,
make sure to get as much information about them as possible up front.
exactly.
Yeah, and going back to the food thing, listen, Twinkies, Doritos, and Coca-Cola, I got news for you. That ain't food.
It's
Don't be a
not.
cheapskate. Oftentimes in your budget, food's going to be the major thing because you can have them filming in weather that's just inclement. And if you want them to hang in there with you
Mhm.
and you want to keep the morale up, that food better be, on point. It doesn't mean that you have to go to a fancy schmancy restaurant and cater the stuff like that. But what it does mean, aside from getting to understand their allergies and stuff, that you provide good, decent food because they're going to remember that. And next time they want you to work with them, they're gonna be like, this cat right here, he tried to, feed me a
Try to
slim.
starve me to death.
Yeah, yeah, he gave me a couple of Slim Jims and a Mountain Dew and told me to roll with that. I'm like, I can't do it.
You also don't want your cast getting sick,
Hmm.
or I mean, a lot of things. You want them to perform to their best of their abilities. So you want them to have a good, healthy diet, and stuff like that. So whoever's doing your craft services needs to also keep that in mind. Um, Again, with one thing that we do with our martial arts is that whenever we take on a new student, which we do this for film too, but I mean, when we bring a new student in, before they even start training, we give them like an aversion list and everything like that. We break down like what are things that they're not willing to tolerate. For one, it's like if there's music being played, if there's music being played in the background or something like that, like would you be offended by certain things? Or if if you're, and I know this sounds silly, especially now in 2019, but if people are going to be, and again, this goes back into that negotiation part to understand everything is clear, but if people are homophobic, or if people do not like to be around certain people, or this, that, and the third, you need to understand that up front. And that alone, just like when he was talking about replacing people, that
Mhm.
alone can cut a lot of headache out of the way. Because people need to know, you need to know, who do I have? Who am I hiring? It's an application process, just like it's a job.
Mhm.
It is a job. You're hiring these people. You need to know, like, you don't have to get into their personal lives or anything like that. But if that's going to be an issue, then you need to ask. You need to find out, and they need to tell you.
And that's also part of the casting
Oh,
process.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. But we have. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I mean, we have things that we do that we go through entire social media pages and all this other kind
oh,
of
I
stuff, and we
stalk you.
do. Oh yeah,
I
we.
stalk you before I hire you.
Oh yeah, it's all about character and you know everything about who you are as a person and what you bring to the table too. Like these projects are not a simple thing. We put a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort into putting our projects together, or as a whole, and we need to make sure, we as a whole, as filmmakers, we need to make sure that people put that care and that attentiveness and, that assertion into our projects, we know they're not going to care for it as much as we do. But overall, they'll be more proud of the outcome when they see how much care was put into it by themselves, by everyone on set, this, that, and the third. And again, like I said, it's like people want to know they're safe. They want to know they're taken care of and everything like that. And they don't want to come to work having to worry about other people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's,
Which brings us to the next thing, which would be training and safety.
yes.
And I also would like to add, too, because it's something we haven't covered, but for every film, you need to have insurance as well.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about it in the other part, in the production, in the project development stage. We touched on it, but we didn't go into detail. But along with those contracts and stuff like that, you do definitely want licensing and everything like
Now,
that.
I just wanted to add something to what we were saying before. Circling back to the aversion that you may have. Given the fact that we're in the South, and South can be very conservative and stuff like that, if you have any illusion that, if you do happen to, make it in this particular field and you somehow end up, going to LA or Atlanta, if you are a bigot, if you are homophobic, if you are misogynist, if you are, basically, any of these things and more, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. Because first and foremost, the LGBTQ community in Hollywood is very strong. If you go there with those preconceptions, I'm not saying that's going to have to be your thing. You can be, whoever you are, but you have to, respect others regardless of what their orientation is or what their belief is. Because at the end of the day, it's a job, it's an industry, and it's a career. And, you can't go in there with certain, preconceived notions and expect that everybody is going to mold themselves directly to you. The other thing is this. You got to be able to work under all kinds of situations. Now, if it's something that's genuinely unlawful and you're uncomfortable with it, then by all means, you voice those concerns. But again, if you're a straight up bigot, or if you have these really strong convictions, then and you want to impart them on others, you can have them. That's great, but you cannot impart them on others and expect them to to think the same way that you do. So
Absolutely.
keep that in mind, because I've been to casting calls where the director basically tells me, hey, I just want to let you know that I'm gay. Now, I'm respectful, so if you're not too into what I'm into, I respect that, but I just want to let you know off the bat, because some people have issues with that. I'm like, I don't have an issue with that, man. This is a job. We got a film to get done. And that's that. So I just want to put you guys on notice with that, and don't go over there with any illusions.
Yep. And so, which again, going to the next thing, talking about scheduling necessary training and safety. We are huge about safety, and everybody should be.
Yeah.
That's not something you want to cut corners with, but understand that everyone that's on that set needs to have a clear awareness of safety, and so that if any safety concerns arise, that they can point them out and say, hey, we need to take pause here and pay attention to this, because this is a potential safety risk. So that necessary training, if there's any action roles or anything like that, everybody needs to go. They need to get trained properly with your stunt coordinator or your fight choreographer or whatever the case may be, or safety coordinator. You need to make sure that everyone on set has a general understanding of what you require. That's just one thing that you don't have to worry about as much once everybody is on the same page. Okay, so any training, any kind of training, I don't care if it's training for the role itself. It could be an acting coach training for their role specifically. Any training that they need, even if it's like, I know one thing that I like to do on set, or if you're doing the table reads and stuff like that, is actually pulling in all the actors that are in one specific scene for that scene. I go over stuff and I work with them one on one and as a group for that scene individually. But again, that's part of their training.
Yeah.
Um,
And some people like to do table reads.
which is the next thing, actually, table
Yeah.
reads and rehearsing and stuff like that.
Which we don't really. I don't think we've had one table read this one time,
Yeah.
but because we do cast from other states and stuff, it's harder to do for us to do table reads.
Especially if your budget is not as good or as high
Yeah,
to
yeah, to
get
fly
people to,
people.
yeah.
But you can have people usually ours, exchange phone numbers, and we'll read over their scenes over the phone or Skype or FaceTime.
Oh yeah. So and again, but that's the next part of the pre-production process, is scheduling those table reads, whether it's like she said over the phone, Skype, or whatever. Rehearsing, whatever rehearsing that you can do, just like a stage play. You have your regular rehearsing, you have dress rehearsing. Again, with the training, if it's physical training for physical roles or action roles, they need to train in a controlled environment.
And it
And
needs
that's
to be more than like 2 times.
oh
You
yeah,
have to understand that, like in Hollywood and any production, if you're having an action sequence, you need to make sure to take your time that is properly trained and choreographed.
oh yeah. With equipment too. So
Yeah.
whatever training that you have, you need to do it. That's what they call that's what dress rehearsals are for. So there's no mistakes. They know how things are supposed to work in real time, in real gear. We'll get into that. We'll get into
That's
that
another
more. That's a
podcast.
whole other yeah, that's a whole other podcast. But and I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah.
Scheduling locations and call times
This,
and all
in
that.
my opinion, is the most important thing that you can do.
Mhm.
So once you have your locations locked down and your cast locked down, you need to, and also the locations to make sure that you're under contract, because most times you have like a day or two, depending on what you need. And you need to make your schedule. So you need to have your crew arrive at least an hour beforehand, and get all the actors' schedules when they are available. Depending on if you're, a lot of independent filmmakers just do weekends, but schedule your times realistically. Because one thing that a lot of people do is they try to cram 25 scenes into one day. It's realistically not going to happen, and it's going to put you behind. So be realistic about making your schedule. And also, if you do have people flying from out of town, make sure you make your schedule where it's budget friendly and they're not here for 5 days. If you can fit all of their stuff into 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, also schedule in accordance to location. Sometimes the
Yeah.
location is not the same distance for everybody. For instance, we were, doing a film, I think somewhere in Newberry or something like that. And for some of us, Newberry is not that close. So if, that person's maybe a half hour away and, things of that nature, take that into consideration as well. Also looping back to that, have the catering on point, beforehand, pencil that into the scheduling, basically say, hey, lunch times at this time, arrival times at this time, setup time is this time, breakdown times this time, have it all down, right down to the letter so that there's no mystery and there's no confusion because, time is the enemy of your budget. Remember that time can be the enemy of your budget. So try to make it your friend.
Absolutely. Um, and the last thing before production is your final check of your inventory. You want to do one full check over every single aspect before your production starts. Because just like
Yeah.
he said, once that ball gets rolling for production itself, there's really no turning back. When people stop showing up or this, that, and the third, you're talking about budget, budget, budget.
And
The,
there's nothing better than a smooth sailing production because you're prepared and you have everything
absolutely,
that you need.
you have to. But that final check of your inventory is essential. All right, so uh, just making sure the equipment's all on point. The people are all on point. Your crew's all on point. Everybody's ready. Everybody's prepared, and then The next stage will be that actual production, and then you just get it in, and it flows. It will flow.
It
Yeah.
will.
Okay, and I would like to add with regards to checking the inventory, it's good that you have the stuff, but also make sure that it works properly. Make sure that your cameras are in working order. If you have any batteries to charge, make sure that they're charged. Make sure that everything functions as it is supposed to. That kind of harkens back to one of the last movies, or the last movie that Brandon Lee made, which was The Crow. Apparently, there was some mishap with the weapons used, and he actually got shot on set and he died. And that was basically because someone somewhere didn't do their due diligence with making sure that the particular weapon was safe. So, with stuff like that, just make doubly sure that along with saying, hey, I have this, have a separate column that say working order, yes or no? Yes. And then have someone that's accountable for that. Because then if something doesn't work, then, no one wants to take the blame when something doesn't work. So keep that in mind.
Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you can get the notifications, and check us out on we're on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website at Carolina Film Network NPO.org. See you next time.